Welcome to another episode of Women in Focus. We had interviewed our Woman in Focus, who's today, some time back, and I had repeated her interview as well. That's when she had just released this book, as you can see. It's called Mischievous in the Classroom, and she was talking about herself. Her name is Sandip Sodhi, and she's our Woman in Focus today. Since then, she has introduced a book about when we went through wearing masks all the time, and now recently produced another book, which is Moments in Time, and her life in Vancouver. We're going to talk about all these books. Most welcome in our program. How are you doing, Mischievous?
I'm doing really well. Thank you, Shushmaji. And thank you once again for inviting me to your program.
Well, this is so beautiful that you've continued writing books. Now, we talked last time when we interviewed you, I asked you, how come you got interested in books? Let's just revisit that.
Yes, I am a teacher librarian. I was a classroom teacher for many years, and I've seen so many different things that were happening. I'm like, it'd be cool to write from the perspective of a teacher, and also to show diversity and inclusion, things that we didn't see in books when I was a child in Vancouver.
Right.
So I really wanted to bring those into focus.
So to do these three, because the last one I'll talk about that, because that also brings memories for me too. You were growing in East Vancouver, right?
Yes.
And this is a book for that. Having said that, this one is the one that we haven't talked about at all.
That's right. While I was on the program last time, I think we just showed some images.
That's right.
And it's an A to Z book about beautiful things to see in the world. So even though we're no longer, wearing masks, or many of us are not wearing masks, it still talks about the beauty in the world, and to take a moment just to stop and reflect and think of how lucky we are to have beautiful experiences and nature around us.
Now, all these books, what age group are you concentrating on?
Okay, so generally if a child were to come to the library and pick it up, I would say probably about anywhere from about 4 to about 8, but I honestly think they're meant for everybody from 0 to 100, because I've had experiences of elderly people reading my books.
Right.
I've had experiences of middle-aged people reading them, and they've all come back with a different message.
Right.
So I think they're available for everybody.
So the message in this one, the first one was, how, the teacher is mischievous as well, like the kids.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Sure. So Mischievous in the Classroom is about a teacher that goes into a really unruly classroom.
Okay.
And that goes back to my first experiences as teaching. And I'm like, how do I get these kids on my side so that I can actually teach them?
Right.
Because the behavior was chaotic. So the kids wouldn't listen. I tried all those beautiful, calm down, sit down. They wouldn't listen. So then I started to do silly things, like I would do a cartwheel, or a half attempt at a cartwheel, or I would stand up on the desk and say silence. So I used those strategies, and the kids would think, okay, you're bizarre, but I caught their attention.
Yes.
And so I tried to bring that into the book, that through humor and trying different strategies, we can reach the kids' hearts. We just have to be creative.
You just have to be like the kid.
You have to be like the kids, yes.
So
Yep.
chewing gum and blowing those bubbles was another thing that you did?
Absolutely. I did, and I had to make sure I had gum that didn't stick to my face.
That must have been funny.
It was a lot of fun, and the kids got the idea. And right now, even the kids think it's hilarious. So because they think it's funny, they read it, and then they realize, oh yeah, we shouldn't be really doing this kind of stuff in class. So
really, at the end of the day, a book is written either for entertainment,
Yes.
Or it's written for knowledge, or it's written to explain stuff to people. So
Yeah.
what category would you put your books in?
I would say that this one here, Mischievous in the Classroom, is almost to teach.
Yes.
Right? It's almost like, Aesop's fables used to leave a message for us to think about, and what message did we learn from the story?
Right.
I think this is in that category. Yeah.
And your talk to me, what do you see? Beauty and joy from A to Z. So now this one, I asked you about that one last time. This is done totally differently. The artwork is done in a in a totally different manner.
Yes, so Annika Sandhu is the daughter of a friend of mine who paints really well.
Yes.
And I had reached out to her. She painted the pictures for me, and we went back and forth a couple of times just to get the vision out there. And she did a great job trying to make it more realistic, and like her pictures of the flowers and the bees, they're just done so beautifully. It's something that you would see outside, and that's what I wanted to capture. These days when we talk about mindfulness and meditative kind of practices at home, people think that you have to sit in one spot and meditate, and that's the only way to relieve any stress. Like, no, you can do it wherever you go. So here's some messages and here's some reminders of how you can bring that mindfulness into a daily practice wherever you are.
I must say she is a very good artist.
Yes, she is. Yes. Yeah.
So, our community has got some fantastic artists.
Yes.
And so did you have to, now when you get these printed, now this one wasn't as hardcover.
No.
So difference between these two, why?
Well, this one was my first attempt at something, and I'm like, it's a soft cover. Economically, it was easier for me to produce a soft cover book.
Right.
But then the feedback that I got from people was, if it was hardcover, it would have longer longevity, which I know as a librarian.
Yes.
I always buy the hardcover books, but I wanted it to be easier on people's pocketbooks. So, paperback might be a bit cheaper for you to buy. And then they're like, no, just do them in hardcover. I'm like, okay, here we go.
And so you did this one in hardcover.
Yes. Yeah.
And is there a special printer that does this for you, or did you have to do it yourself?
Yeah, I actually self-published through Ingram Spark, and they give us lots of different selections and choices. And the first illustrator, Ken Prieb, he's been my support person for my formatting and everything, so I keep going back to him, and he helps me out with that. So I go through Ingram Spark, and they do all my printing for me, and then ship it to Canada.
So you started with teaching kids, talking about your own life as to, how kids can be rowdy, and you're calming them down in this one. This one you're illustrating, the beauty and joy from your point of view.
Yes.
And the third one, about which I want to talk about after this short commercial break, this seems like another beautiful book, but the illustrator is different in this one.
Yes. Yes.
So I'll talk about that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll ask you many questions about this, because I know this book has been in English, Punjabi in English, and in French, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
Right, 3 of them. Okay. Let's take a short commercial break. We're talking to Sandip Sodhi. We'll be back right after this. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Our woman in focus today is an author. She is a teacher, librarian, and now an author. So her name is Sandip Sodhi. So Sandip ji, we were talking about your 2 books. Your latest one is called Moments in Time, Memories of East Vancouver.
That's correct.
Last time when I interviewed you, we talked about where were you born. So were you born in India?
No, I was actually born in Coventry, England.
Oh, in Coventry?
Yes,
that's right. Yes,
in the Midlands.
Yes.
And then I came to Canada when I was almost 2 years old, so not quite.
Wow.
So I've been living here for
all your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
I won't say the years, but yes, all my years.
No, you don't have to.
Okay.
Now this one, you've taken a new illustrator.
Yes.
Right? And her illustrations, and I'm going to show some of them, are totally different. And I'll open this one up and we'll zoom into it.
Okay.
So the difference from the first book, the second and the third, there is a progression in there as well, and a thought pattern is different.
Yes. It seems as though it's almost like mimicking my journey. The first one is animated. Like a child, I was animated, mischievous, and I wanted the illustrations to be animated, so that's why they were more cartoon-like.
Right.
The second one is almost once again, this time in my life where I'm learning to calm down, appreciate what we have, and be more realistic and about what's available, and that's the realism. And the third one, which is now, is watercolor, like they're fading memories of the past. And so, like we have now, as we go on in life, we're like, oh, I can't remember this, or I can't remember that. But the old stories somehow are still lingering at the back of my mind. So the watercolor pictures depict that fading memory. And my illustrator is Wahida Tejani Byron, who's a teacher that I taught with about 20 years ago at one of the schools I taught at.
Right.
And she's also from Uganda, I believe.
Yes.
And so I wanted to showcase other South Asian authors, illustrators.
Right.
So she's worked with me, and I always knew she was an artist. And funny how the universe works. Somebody mentioned my writing to her, and she told that somebody, I wish I could work with Sandip. And they came back and told me, I'm like, I was thinking about her too. So we reconnected, and she lives on Gabriel Island now.
Right.
So we reconnected, and she said, oh, you've given me purpose. So she spent a year painting the pictures and daily going out there and trying to capture the images. And I gave her photographs. I said, this is what it was like. Can you try to replicate them? And,
Right.
and I think she did a fantastic job.
I think she did an awesome job.
Yes.
Now, I've noticed in all your books that your writing is minimal.
Yes.
Why?
Okay, so if you come into my classrooms these days, you'll notice that the kids are only taking out books that are either cartoony or with minimal sentences in there. It seems as though the fast pace of the world and all the video games and everything are impacting kids in what they can actually sit and read for a long time. The readers are there, definitely they're there. So they want the bigger chapter books, they want all, but the kids are looking for messages, either fun or something that they can connect with right away. And if you have to sit there and read a novel and it's taking days and days and days to read, they get a little bit antsy. It's like, I'm done with it, right? So these picture books are written minimally so that the idea is there, and then they use their own brains to be creative about what could happen or something that they can connect with.
That's a very interesting way of explaining that, because I do know that the attention span of young people is like a gnat.
Yes.
Over
Yes.
and done with. And for television as well, we've noticed that, as you can see, our segments are only 7 minutes.
Yes.
And you can only hold a person's attention, if it is interesting, only for 7 minutes.
That's right.
No more than that, sometimes even less.
Right.
So teachers have been noticing this for a long time.
Yes, I've particularly noticed it for the last 10 years or so. The
Ever
kinds of
since
books.
the advent of iPhone.
Actually, you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
Yes. Once we place those phones in the kids' hands, the attention has changed, because what they can access right now is so super fast that they don't want to have the time to sit there and just look through things. And I'm generalizing. There's a lot of kids that I do know that come to me and say, can you recommend the latest novel? And that makes my heart bloom, right? Because I'm like, yes, we have a reader. So yeah, but I've purposely just kept the print to a minimal.
So the first sentence is always, I loved being a child.
Yes.
Why?
The repetition. Kids love repetition, and it's to get that ingrained in their brain. There's little kids that come in that cannot read books yet.
Right.
But when you repeat the same story to them over and over, they have this sense that I can read, even though they're not reading, but they've heard it so many times. That's the beginning stages of reading, when they can repeat stories. So it was intentionally put there so that they have some sort of confidence when they look at a book. I read that book, or I remember that from this book.
Isn't that beautiful? So you are also using your psychology skills
Yes.
in
Yes.
writing the books too.
That's true, because we do have to take child psychology courses during our sort of our teaching years, right? When
Yes.
we're in teacher education.
Right,
So
right.
it does come in handy. Yes.
Now, at the end of this particular book, because I have other things to ask you as well, and then you've got a glossary in which you're explaining what chai is, what dal is, and all that. Oh, and a chai recipe.
Yes.
And that is what, a Punjabi chai?
Yes. It is a Punjabi. It's the one that was made at my house, right? So
Right.
maybe it was taken from, the neighbor's recipe. I don't know, but it's pretty similar to what. Well, I don't make it. Arvinder makes it, so he always. It's his recipe, probably.
Now, Arvinder is the better half of Sandeep ji.
That's true.
So, how do you make your cha?
How do I make my cha? So I will boil the water when I make it, and I will add like elaichi and long, so cloves and cardamom. Let them boil, and then and a little bit of cinnamon
Okay, and when does the chai patti come in?
at the end.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
After
so we
they've
put the
boiled,
milk
okay.
in and boil it together, and then
Okay.
the chapati.
Sandip Sodhi is our woman in focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Women in Focus. Sandip Sodhi is our Woman in Focus today. These are very nicely made, hardcover books. What is the message behind these ones?
Okay, so those are all about memories, and I really wanted parents, grandchildren, and even the youngsters to sit together to share those stories. I think we're living in a time when we're not communicating well enough with people in our families. So this is almost forcing them to sit, relive some stories, and share with each other. Each page in that book has a sentence about a memory, and then there's a question after each sentence, and that question makes people share their stories. And I'm noticing that there's a big disconnect between little children, the grandparents, and everyone's doing their own thing. Whereas I'm hoping this will unite families again to talk about what they did as children and how the littles can connect with similar stories. Personally, both of my parents have passed away, so I'm like, who's going to remind us of what they did? So I started to write about memories that I had with my parents so that I could share with my family, and others have also said that invoked a lot of nostalgia in them, and they started to talk about their own experiences, even though they might have come from Germany or from China or from India.
Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
So now you've done this in English, Punjabi, and then in French.
That's correct.
Right? So three different, books.
Yes.
And why French?
French, there's a need for representation of minorities in French books because we are a French-speaking country as well.
Right.
So I figured that if I could write it in French, and I do speak French, so I'll be able to share my story in French and have diversity represented.
You talked a lot about kids. There a lot of, and this is not a question that I would lightly ask. I wanted to find out the meaning of the SOGI program that is being used in the school system. Can you decipher that for me?
Yes, so SOGI is like, it stands for Sexual Orientation and Gender Identification, and it's a collective where the ministry has come in, UBC Med has given us resources and a whole bunch of other allies, and basically have given schools and parents resources that they could turn to if their children have questions. I know there's sometimes miscommunication about what's being taught in the schools, but rest assured that we're just giving children a basic message of love everybody, respect everybody, even if their family structure looks different than yours.
So when you say family structure looks different, you're talking about maybe single parents, maybe two moms, two dads, or mom and dad, or just one parent looking after the kids.
Absolutely. So we really try to reinforce the idea that families look different. In one household, maybe there's just a mom, maybe there's been a divorce, maybe the children are living with dad, or maybe they've been adopted. Maybe some families have two moms, maybe there's two dads, and that's all okay because love is love. Are you being cared for? Are your needs being taken care of? That's what love is.
So does SOGI program, and because I'm not proficient in that, I'm asking you that question, and if it is out of line, I ask for forgiveness. Is the SOGI program made to ask kids at a very early age how do they feel about their sexuality, or is it when they go through hormonal changes that program should come into place?
I think what's happening now is because we're so open about our family structures and our identities and genders, that children from an early age, if they learn to respect people as they see them, it would be beneficial to society. So it's not to say, what are you? It's to say, how do we respect people around us? And we share messages and books that have been vetted by the school districts and the Ministry of Education to see what's appropriate to teach children. And it is in their curriculum, so we have to teach it. And sometimes it makes people uncomfortable, especially if you haven't come across this. In our, Indian families especially, it's difficult to talk about sexuality and about hormonal changes or anything that comes up. So I could sense the fear, and if we can kind of uncover that fear and maybe go to the people that know about those topics and ask them. So if you have a question, rather than assuming that we're teaching kids, oh, what are you, a boy or a girl, go and ask the teacher, can you please explain what you're going to be teaching? And I'm sure that teacher will be happy to share resources or what the curriculum is asking us to teach.
When did this come about? I mean, why do you think this came about?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I cannot remember the dates.
Right.
But I think it was because this need of children to feel respected. When we saw two fathers or two mom families coming to school with their children, and those children being mocked for that reason and being bullied for that, we want to protect children. We don't want bullying to happen for any reason at all.
Right.
And if this is starting to come more at those children, what wrong did they do in life?
Right.
True. So why can't we share messages of just general respect, which is what we're trying to do? And then when you get older, when the kids are older and they're trying to really sense, am I leaning towards having a gay lifestyle? Who can they go to get the proper answers? If they're not comfortable sharing with their families at home, is there a counselor? Is there a teacher? Can they get resources that are not just made up on the websites? But
because those are just so misleading.
Yes.
The reason why I asked you this question is because I heard from people that in a classroom, as early as 5-6-year-old, they are asked every day, how do you feel today? Do you feel like a girl or a boy? And I thought that was not right. And to me, it's not right to me. So I thought I'll ask a teacher.
Definitely. And the question about feeling, like how are you feeling today, that's a very legitimate question. Are you feeling happy? Are you feeling sad? But not with the extra words added to it. Not like, are you feeling like a girl? Are you feeling like a boy, right?
So do you think that all this has been blown out of proportion?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've been teaching for 30 years and I have not come across any classroom in the 7 different schools that I've taught at where we've explicitly asked children, are you a girl or are you a boy?
Oh, I see. Okay. Well, you and I need to talk more about this, and let's continue this conversation with other experts on the radio.
I would love to.
As always, thank you so very much. What a brilliant job that you're doing. Are you writing the next book?
I have started, yes.
I knew it. All right, and we will see that soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Sushma-ji.
Thank you for being a Woman in Focus today. Sandip Sodhi has been our Woman in Focus today. Don't go away. We'll be right back.